Alrighty, how do we start? Hello again, everyone. There I am. Thank you for joining me again. I am here, and again, I like what I said yesterday, Mister Making It Up as I Go, because that is kind of it. Maybe I'll call it the Making It Up as I Go show. That that's got a ring to it. Who knows? Maybe if it sticks, you'll know that's what happened. You have heard it here first. I am doing a few things. Yesterday, in fact, I got on a couple days ago. I was on Tuesday, today being Thursday, and I did the live stream. Had some technical things happen, and so yesterday I downloaded that video. I went through it. I patched up audio. I did a few other things, and I think I made it a little bit more interesting to watch. And the audio was definitely better. And then I uploaded that yesterday, which I'm still in the process of putting some announcements out that it exists. But so much is my process. And I have also been reading some amazing books. I am reading an autobiography right now, and it's called, the title is Modern Bethesda. It is the autobiography. I believe it's an autobiographical account of the works of one J.R. Newton. J.R. Newton is was a doctor and someone that our history has, the history that you hear about, that you're taught, and I'm talking about in your history books. I'm talking about in your religions and other places. J.R. Newton kind of don't exist for all practical purposes. And what he did was remarkable. This particular book was published, I believe. Oh, am I going to be able to find this really quick? Anyway, bottom line is, I think it was published in 1867, maybe somewhere in that time frame. Not recently, you know what I mean. But what he did, he was a doctor. He was a doctor, a physician, so to speak. He was trained in the human physiology, etc. But he was also, by his not just description, by his mission in life as he saw it, he was a healer. He was here. He had the ability to help alleviate what he saw as human suffering. And of course, there's been suffering in this world for generations, for centuries, if not millennia. Okay, but certainly for centuries. And misery was a popular thing back then as it is today. And the interesting thing is that the main modality, the main mode of effect of J.R. Newton was where he would put himself in a state, you might say, uh, frankly, of a loving state of connectedness, not only with love, but with the person whom he was directing his energies and thoughts to. And he would simply put his hands on that person. He would lay on, touch them, and he would confer something to them. And in fact, he didn't have to even do that though, because in some cases, some people were so in such a situation, they were in such dire situations, and had been that way for a long time. I mean, many cases for years before ever crossing his path. Some of these people were not able to actually even visit him. He Some of them were, if they did visit, if they did come to him wherever he was uh, doing his thing, they might be brought there in a bed. Someone might be carrying them. They might be in a carriage. Now, again, this is in the 1860s, 1862, 1863, 1864. And perhaps before that, because again, I'm only a quarter of the way through the book, 300-page book, but I'm still about a quarter of the way through it. And the point basically, though, is that some people were not even able to do that. So someone would take something that that person that belonged to that individual. It could have been a shoe. It could have been a locket. It didn't matter what it was, but something that belonged to that individual, someone who could see him would take it to them on the behalf of that person. And he would essentially hold that thing in his hand, and he might look at the whoever and say, by the time you get home, they're okay, they're fine, they're well. And sure enough, by the time this person got back to wherever they had traveled there from, the person was healed. They were healthy again. And one thing about it, this 300 pages, most of the book, this is well documented, and the documentation that covers these 300 pages is only a small fraction of the actual cases that he actually dealt with. The man was seeing, on average, about 100 to 120 people a day. First of all, he would go to a city, he'd go to a place, and he would uh, set up in a room, in a hall, some place that could accommodate a number of people. And people would come there, and he would basically do what he called operations on them. And his operations, oftentimes, much of the time, took perhaps 10, 15 minutes. Sometimes it took a half hour, something like that. And in addition to that, these people could come in where they might have had their limbs might have been atrophied. Sometimes they were blind or almost blind. So they had some kind of condition, oftentimes chronic, that had been that way for a long time. Many of them were on crutches, and had to have the support of a crutch to get them, if they could even do that. And many of them also, by the time they had been treated, they left the crutches there. I mean, this is a recurring theme throughout the account of his work, that there were these crutches that people left behind. They had no more use for them. And in addition to that, people their improvement was lasting. It wasn't something that came up and then waned again. Nope, they were healthy again. They functioned again. They were well again, and it stayed that way. So I'm continuing to my way through this book, and I'm not only fascinated by it, because in one sphere, it could be looked upon as a religious book because he connected with love. He used, if you will, or relied on the example that's given in the Bible from of Jesus, in the sense of the miracles. He said that Jesus and his apostles, but what's called, what is referred to as miracles. They're referred to as miracles because people do not have a conscious understanding and awareness of the modality, of the mode by which the change occurred. And this isn't because it's miraculous, it's because we have a limited understanding. And the problem is, the word miracle stands as a surrogate, or stands as a placeholder for our lack of understanding, which we don't acknowledge we don't have. We don't acknowledge our lack of understanding. We act as though we understand everything, and anything that is outside of what we understand is becomes subjective, becomes something to speculate on, even to dismiss, because it's not part of the general way of looking at things and understanding things. But who cannot understand the choice, the conscious choice to put oneself in a loving state? First of all, he put himself in a loving state. Putting himself in that loving state opened him up. It opened, you could say, his channel of energy. That energy came in through him. He wasn't the healer. He was the instrument for the healing. He opened himself and his channel fully. I want to say widely, fully, to receive. He put his trust, he put his understanding, his faith, however you want to say it, in the power that he was opening up and being a reservoir and a conduit for. And with that, he was touching someone else who comes from the same source, who is fed by the same fountain. Life is what's fed through these vessels. We are not the vessels. We are the life that is fed through it. And we have, in many, many ways, constricted that channel. We have shut down. We have decided to be conditionally giving of our beneficent favors of beingness, of kindness. We hold that back until it's, for the right one or for the right people, so to speak. And for every right person that we think ought to be, they're going to be what we can think of as wrong people too. And in so doing, we shut ourselves off when we are in that state of judgment, so to speak. So that was J.R. Newton. And his book is so well documented with testimonials of the people, by the people whom he uh, touched. Gosh, I mean that literally, whose lives he touched beneficially. And so I'm going to continue now. Here's the thing. As I So here's the thing about all of that. The people came, they were touched. And a lot of these folks had been given up by doctors. A lot of these people have been had conditions that were pronounced as incurable. And some of them had been, many of them had been in these states for years and years and years. I mean, we're 3 years, 5 years, sometimes two digits of years, 15 years, etc. And within a matter of minutes to hours to a few days, they were normal. They were healthy again. What is health? Normal. Normal is healthy for us. Normal and healthy is functional. So blockages, inflammation, the atrophy, the energy had a chance and an opportunity to flow through the individual once again, which had been blocked, the flow of which had been blocked by whatever reasons and for whatever reasons the person had done it. And I think as I'm moving through this book, that's one of the big things that I am not seeing, which is a good reason to talk about this, to reflect on it, because what it tells me and what Newton does say is that the facility that he has is within everyone. Now, that's something that has become evident to me. We all have this ability to heal. In fact, if we didn't have the ability to heal, when or if we have an injury, or you have a cut, or you have an abrasion, you have something, whatever it is, if we didn't have the ability to heal, it would never happen. But the ability to heal is innate within all of us. We have come to a place where we don't acknowledge that ability to heal. And in fact, we tend to put or give credit for any healing that we done, or any protection that we may think or are convinced or suggested that we ought to be having from some condition, let's say that we don't even have. What they tend to do is, because of the belief systems, we then put ourselves in a way of reducing our healing ability. Okay, these are matters of consciousness. And that is one of the reasons I decided to talk about dreams and consciousness and Consciousness. I actually wrote something about my, let's see, anyway, I like what I wrote, but I can't see it now in terms of a description. But anyway, it's a nice description. So what I was going to do, what it occurred to me to do is a couple things. One is to show a little trailer. I'm going to give a shot at sharing my screen again. I did this yesterday and there was no audio. And but I think I have that worked out this time. So I'm going to keep doing these things so that things just work the way they're supposed to. I'm going to cut back my my audio here, and I'm going to find the screen. So a friend of mine sent me a trailer for a movie, and it's called the One Field. And this is a trailer for that particular movie. And I'm going to chat about this a little bit, and then we're going to move on because it's all connected. This particular, and let me see, so I will do this, get it all set up, and then, yeah, it looks like it's ready. Let's go for it, see what happens here. Do this.
Can humans find a time when they will allow space for what they don't believe is possible?
For 300 years, science has asked the question, is there a field of energy that connects everything?
Where do our thoughts go when we die?
Someday, there will be inventions in physics, and when they do, you will see that consciousness is energy. What human beings think collectively can be measured.
You have hundreds of thousands of molecules. They can exchange vibrations all over around the field. This is chemistry, but it's a kind of dancing chemistry.
In consciousness, we can communicate and perceive anywhere throughout the entire universe.
Energy increased dramatically.
Distance does not matter.
The field is the origin of everything. That's what the music is actually doing. It's connecting to the field.
An amazing result.
What is a thought? Thought is a particle of light. We can measure it.
Our thoughts are broadcast to the field.
What happens in one part of the field influences other parts of the field in the same instant. And this is deeply profound.
The data has even surprised us. We are far more interconnected and synchronized with the Earth's magnetic fields than we ever would have predicted.
Is Jerusalem on?
Jerusalem is on.
We have people from Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, Tunisia, Bahrain, Kuwait City.
This is so emotional.
We also have many thousands of people from all over the world participating on YouTube, all coming together for a historic event.
The peace is already here.
All right. Okay. I'll turn that off. That is a trailer for a movie called The One Field. And interestingly, I know some of the people that were in that film. I saw Krishna Madhapa, who I met some years ago. I've been to his home. He's in Taos, New Mexico. Dr. Kortkoff from St. Petersburg. I've known him. I've interviewed him. There are a few other people, someone else that crossed my mind. But at any rate, people are talking about consciousness. And this is I presume here's a new movie. I just saw the trailer. I liked it. And it's what we are talking about. In my, I talked about consciousness, because the way we are doing things today in our society we act as though we all that is known and all that is knowable is already known. I call it patent office syndrome. And somewhere in the late 19th century, as I recall, it could be an urban legend as far as I know. I have to look it up. But my understanding was the patent office was going to close because, from what they could tell, all that was knowable had already been figured out. There was no point in having a patent office because there wasn't anything else to learn. That, arrogance and stupidity are not too far apart. I think they're two sides of the same coin, if you know what I mean. And so this is, or hubris. That's finally started realizing what the word hubris actually means. That's hubris. They are so sure of their thinking about something that it doesn't occur to them that there's something else to know. There's something else. There are some other factors that may make everything that they're doing, thinking, saying, and or intending wrong or not or ill-advised. And we are passing on in a social, in an educational, in interrelational basis, many we're standardized on these ill-advised ways of being. And only we can change those things, but you can't change it unless you acknowledge that, well, first of all, one is there, and secondly, if you're carrying this way of being or seeing, then you have not only the power, but the responsibility to change yourself. And so that is something I don't hear. And getting back to and relating it back even to J.R. Newton, the work that he did, as amazing as it was, he helped over 250,000 people become well. People who were sick became well. And the thing that did not occur during that time, and this isn't a criticism, this is an observation, is that the people left, yes, they were better. And that unto itself is super. The question, the issue, the point is how much more aware did these people become, or does anyone become, in the sense that there's enough willingness, there's enough will within people to start not simply wanting to heal others, but first of all, teach and show others that they can heal themselves, that we don't have to go to this point of despair. There's so many decisions that we can make if we are being honest, if we're being courageous, if we're being loving, for example, that will never take us to that brink. And our going to the brink, going to the precipice, is all associated with the decision to withhold, for one reason or another, whatever considered justified or not, our love, our expressions of consciousness that transcend the apparent boundaries and barriers that we think of as our real. I guess is my point. And with that, and toward that end, I guess you can say, that's consciousness. That is also, I have been discovering some of my stuff. I haven't been discovering, I have been rediscovering. I have computers kind of the wazoo. So here, I'm on one computer down here, and I've got two screens. So one here, one over there. Okay, so I got two screens. And then here, I've got a computer down there. There's a screen over there. And then I've got a tablet sitting over here. I got my stuff, okay? And on my computers, I've got material that I have produced. Some of them are videos, some of them are audios, some is writing. And I was foraging through my system the other day, and I came across a folder with some of my stuff. I have some folders that have articles that I wrote years ago. In this case, in the late 1990s, 1998. And so I actually have one that I'm going to share because it's all relevant. And it's funny when you can come across something you wrote in, well, at this point in time, 25 years ago or somewhere thereabouts, and see to what extent what you said then applies today, if it's still relevant and what changes. It turns out that I actually had a couple, I didn't change anything. I added a couple of things between the original and the um, and where I am now. And so this I'm going to share. I'm going to do a little reading of this material. And this is, I'll call it a poem, and I use that term advisedly. Necessarily one of it's a prosaic poem, I guess I might say. But even when I first wrote it, I loved the title, and you'll see the title, and then you'll see where the hook is toward the end. But this is, I'll bring it up. The name of the poem is "Mothers of Peace." And so what I want to do is I'm going to actually, yeah, I'm going to do that. And if I do this, excuse me, unless that's okay. I guess I will stay there. I was going to just say, share this. Okay, so the work is called Mothers of Peace, as you see it here. What we have and how we die, whenever that is not nearly as important as who we are and how we live now. Whether we were rich or not doesn't matter compared to what we give. I might even put there now. Yeah, why don't I edit this while I go if I have to do that? Now, yeah, I'm going to do that. Money we make, give, or take or receive is of no value beyond this realm. The love we allow to shine from within us is the ultimate infinite passport and currency. I love that. Life bestows an equal opportunity for every man and woman to make choices that will favor love or fear, health or disease, sadness or cheer, slavery or freedom for our voices. Beware the idle mind, fed a steady diet of false promises and dour dreams, for it sequesters a malnourished heart, its inspired visions constricted, dimmed, blurred, and distorted, given the trickle of truth that gets through. Sad is the heart as it reflects on a life at its end, where the choice to meet tough times with bright ideas went unmet and unmade. The heart is saddened not because times were tough, nor for that matter, the journey was rough. Saddened because our answers to life's challenges were null and void, overshadowed by complaints to an all powerful Lord who, it was learned too late, was powerless to do anything on our behalf except give us the power to discern wheat from chaff, and in calm, silent inner counsel, choose who and what we would be. How sad it is to not realize the divine power we had all along to live in love until we're about to die in disease, bigotry, cold heartedness, or fear. How, how sad it is to sit in misery, passively watching and waiting for the day when someone else makes times better for us, yet comfortable in the belief that such a day will never come. How frustrating it is to see so many who will rest on the laurels of dead, falsified, or monetized hopes rather than merge themselves in the spirit of inspired, dynamic, real, and possible dreams. And surprise, surprise, when we step through the portal called death, now free of the baggage of unrequited hopes and patented calamities that burdened our lives, and realize that we were our own biggest obstacles, not others, isms, or popular schisms that were so easy to point to and blame. Changing the tenor of this time tarnished story is by no means beyond our reach. The power is within us, here and now, my friends. In this simple truth, I beseech. What we have and how we will die, whenever that is not nearly as important as who we are and how we live now. Who we are is directly influenced by the truth, not beliefs, that we seek, embrace, embody, and share. How we live directly affects our choices, voices, hopes, and dreams, thoughts, energies, and action streams. If you want peace to come to this earth, then be its mother. Give it birth. Men need not only be fathers of war, they can be mothers of peace too. Indeed, peace may actually begin with you. Embody that which brings joy to the world every day. And in death's passage, you'll discover the brighter life that beckons ahead for you through the wonderful examples and gifts that you left behind of peace. There it is, mothers of peace. So, hope you enjoyed that. I when you hear the words and the discussion about consciousness and wantiousness, as I am calling it, it then relates to the map of consciousness that I was so touched by a few years ago now by David R. Hawkins, who was a author of a book called Power versus Force. If just to refresh your mind, this was and is David Hawkins' map of consciousness. And you can see where the research was done over 20 some odd years, 200,000 some odd examples. And you start looking at at words. These are words that are describing various states of, frankly, consciousness. These are expressions. These are how people express themselves. People, everyone expresses all of these or some of these. I won't call them emotions, consciousness states at all times. Now, some stay in one area versus some areas versus others. Some predominate one or something, but there's a mix that, in totality, makes up who we are at any given point in time and what we are expressing, and also the relative power that we have to, let's say, manifest our dreams or not. Now, here's the other thing, and I covered this yesterday. Everything is a dream. All life as we know it, probably beyond our knowing, is essentially and can be described as a dream. This isn't a bad thing. It is whatever it is. If you're enjoying your life, you've dreamed it up and you're living it. Hallelujah. However, a lot of people are not living the life of their dreams. And so they are thinking that it's not living, they're not living the life that they desired, that they intended. They're following, they have put someone else's advice, they put someone else's ideas, and it could be through our education system, it could be through upbringing, it could be by the bully who is in the third grade. It doesn't really matter where it came from. We are all impressed by the experiences that we have had, to the point and to the extent that we define ourselves by them. When you begin to define yourself by an imprint that is or was disturbing, so to speak, it becomes a limitation that we have adopted or acquiesced to. It then becomes a way to we mold our consciousness and our vibration accordingly. But we don't tend to think that it is changeable. We tend to think it is who we are. So when someone says, I'm afraid of this, I'm afraid of that, you can see here, fear has a numerical or energetic or relative value relative to other ways or modes of expression. It has a value of 100. And therefore, if we find ourselves talking about things in terms of a fear, or we've got anxiety about something, or here's desire, it's at 125. It's not fear. It's a bit above fear in this scale. And this scale is not a linear scale. So from 20 to 30 is not 1.5 times, from shame to guilt. Okay. Actually, guilt is much, much more powerful, much higher than shame, but it's still far, far lower. Now, these logarithmics scale is that there is an exponential factor. So from 20 to 30 is like from 20 to the 10th power to 30 to the 10th power, or something like that. Anyway, it's a lot more. It's not simply a linear projection. It's more. It's much more pronounced. So from shame to 100, fear is much higher. But on the other hand, the line, this thick line here, is referred to as I guess it's probably not referred to anything here, but it is essentially the line of demarcation between the realm of what's called force and the realm of power. So force is where you're trying to push people into something, one way of doing things. You're trying to use you coercion, deception, fraud. All these things are ways to get people to do things that are in and of themselves out of integrity, where the person is not necessarily wanting to do it themselves. Okay. But it's also a sense of opposition. Okay. So this is where the duality here. Here's you got your hatred and anger. This is up at 150. It's beyond fear. Okay. But so someone could be angry, they could be hatred or hateful or antagonistic. But even above that is pride. Where do we have the pride? We've got so many agendas now that are have the pride, and but it's still a form of groupism. My group versus this group. One thing that's not shown up here in pride, and it's not necessarily where I'm saying this bad per se, but in our sports, in our competition, we've got pride for our team versus another team. All of these are still under the line of demarcation between force, and certainly in the area of our sports and our, football. We got football consciousness, and we got our group versus the other group. And is that not force? That's a demonstration of the use of force. One team wants to go this way, the other team wants to go that way, and they're sitting back deciding, I'm going to keep you from getting where you want to go, and you're going to try to prevent me from getting where I want to go. Is that this is all below. This is the realm of force. This is not the realm of power. This is about disempowerment. People are getting together to disempower, to assert their superiority over someone else's ability to get to their goals. So these are acts of consciousness. And when you're in this mindset, this is the realm of force. Power, or should I say, begins with courage. That's 200. That begins with affirmation. And really fascinating when we start talking. I've done so many videos on talking about CoopCrowd as an example, and because we are, as a society, entrenched in our beliefs about what's possible and what's not possible, first of all, but even more so, we have a beliefs about what we can do versus what we cannot. And those imprints are part of a person's consciousness. I mean, and I do it. I have done it. I mean, as a kid, growing up, even in high school, I mean, you see the little girl across the way, and I'm sitting here. We got our little boutonnieres on and our ties, and they've got a nice little dress on. They have a little dance and stuff like that. And who's afraid to go up and talk to the girl that caught my attention, that captivated me? Little boys get captivated by little girls. I did, at least. So I figured I did the same thing, and it's probably the other way around too. But we have the conditioning, whatever it was. I'm not saying it was wrong or bad, but there's a disinclination to step into something, or give ourselves the chance to experience something that really we would like to. And the line of demarcation is courage. That's at 200. It's affirmation. It's feasibility. Why was I not inclined to do it? Because I had some opinion, perhaps. I wasn't antagonistic. I wasn't any of this stuff, but I wasn't necessarily sure of the feasibility of it. And therefore, I ensured that it wasn't feasible if I didn't take the step. And there are a lot of people who are not taking the step, or not inclined to take the step to give CoopCrowd, for example, a shot, because they're really giving themselves a shot. They will be stepping outside of their comfort zone, their familiarity zone. And so it takes courage to step outside of that. It also takes neutrality. Now, neutrality is above courage. Neutrality is basically stepping beyond this idea of pride, stepping beyond the judgment of who's going to do what or not going to do, like we know better than they do. It's about trusting, and this includes trusting ourselves, for example. And so you start seeing how the numbers go up. And again, these are not linear. These are quantum leaps. These are major orders of magnitude of greater power. If you think about shame and guilt and fear and all those things, if you think about them in the form of an image, and that image, as these numbers go up, may increase in either luminosity or clarity, or some combination of both. And yet, up until they get to 200, they're going to be distorted and perhaps discernible, but still distorted. So there's a lot of opportunity for misinterpretation. This is where most of our society lives normally right now. Okay, this is normal. And the only way that this has changed is for people to step above this line, to step into the line of power and to embody the power that is within them. No one is without the ability to step into their own power. So what I did, having made this point that I'm making here, is I love this book. In my show that I did, Talk for Food, one of my funnest um, conversations was with Dr. Hawkins, and I had read the book maybe, I don't know, 15 years, maybe I felt 20 years before. I had read it a long time ago. That he wrote a lot of books, but Power versus Force was the subtitle. Oh gosh, I got it right here. Power versus Force: The Hidden Determinants of Human Behavior. Super book, and I love the book. And this was part of this was introduced in that book. He has since now, Dr. Hawkins has transitioned, so he's no longer on this plane. But there was a book published, I presume it was posthumously after he had passed, called The Map of Consciousness Explained. Because after he introduced this map of consciousness in Power versus Force, he traveled around the world explaining this, to talk to people, or having talks about the consciousness itself. So you see, I showed the trailer for this book called, not this book, but this movie called The One Field, and they're talking about consciousness. This is not a new subject. Consciousness has existed since humanity existed, because that is, in essence, what we are. We are not our forms. We are the consciousness that expresses through the form. And therefore, when we're done with the form, or the form is done with us, we continue. We drop the form, we continue, even to a point of forming another form, if we still got stuff that we want to work out in this particular manner. There's a way that we can look at life that's different, that begins to take the fear, which is all at 100, out, and choosing to be love, choosing to be love puts you there. And you don't have to even know how to do these things. The moment you start letting more love in, because when you open that doorway of love within you, you are also opening the gateway to all of this that comes through you. When you close that love off, you're closing that gateway off. That's where your joy is. That's where your peace is. That's bliss, etc., etc. So I was elated to, first of all, come across this and learn it. I loved his books. The book, there's a subsequent book called The Map of Consciousness Explained, and the author still says it's David Hawkins. So either he wrote those before he passed, but I think it was compiled after he did. Doesn't matter. There's a book called The Map of Consciousness Explained. But essentially what I've done is I've taken this information and I have reordered it, and I've represented it. I'm presenting it in a different way. The framework is the same. The reasoning is all the same, but you're going to see right now, we're going to just go to da. Here it is. Boom. This, I'll zoom out first of all, is the map of consciousness. Now, why do I call it consciousness? If you haven't seen this before, consciousness is the lens through which we conceptualize, view, interpret, and ultimately experience life, both as we know it and as we wish it to be, assuming those are not two in the same. It is consciousness, our awareness of self as units of one and all life, that persists before the first breath of birth and after the last breath of death. The Map of Consciousness was originally introduced by Dr. David R. Hawkins in his groundbreaking book, Power versus Force, The Hidden Determinants of Human Behavior. So I found the 2002, still seemed like I read it before that, but it doesn't matter. This adaptation, the Map of Onesciousness, an amalgamation of oneness and consciousness by Adam Abraham, is designed to help us to see the real goal and gifts of life and serve as a roadmap to facilitate the volitional redirection. That means by choice, by conscious choice, direction of mind, attention, energy, and action based on habituated or acquired beliefs. Note the spreading out there about ourselves to a conscious knowledge and experience of our inherent, implicit, and inalienable godness. So essentially, godness is inalienable, can't be taken away. It is built in, it is inherent, it's implicit in everything that we are. It's inalienable. However, it can be submerged if we spend our time and our energy and our consciousness in this realm on the outer limits of our beingness. And it's the limits of isolation. So if I'll zoom in now, you recall the chart, the power chart that went from 20 to 1,000 in logarithmic values. You're going to see here, this is one of the fundamental things that I changed. There's a chart here as well. And instead of it, and I refer to it as a luminosity index, and it, instead of going from 20 to 100 to 1,000, it goes from 0.02 to 1. And ultimately, you could say 1, this is source. This is who we are, who we always are, who we have been, who we always will be, except to the extent that we think we are not. Okay. So, but ultimately, this is us. This is where the best of us comes from, but in fact, it's where all of us comes from. This is life. And when we use the words I am, it empowers everything that we attach to those words. And so that includes the wholeness of things. That includes, I call it the apartness of things. Because now, one thing I should have done, and think I am going to do with this design, while, for example, there's a heavy line between power and force, because that's the line of demarcation between power and force. So I have a dotted line. I'm going to change the weight of that line. When I see something that could be better or should be better or different, you make the improvement. So the line is here, but this is the courage. So if we look from here, I'll bring it this way. This is that same line. So in shame would have been 20 on the other. And in this case is 0.02. And then it moves, but these are all, everything else is the same. Ultimately, it's about being the one. And as you move along this line in your in the predominance of your thinking and of your being, then you are embodying, you are expressing these qualities, but ultimately you're becoming more yourself. That's the really kind of point of this. It is becoming who we are, as opposed to thinking that we are something that if you say something about, being connecting with your higher self or with God, we are saddled with all of the weight and the baggage of, well, God is over someplace else and someplace there. The point of all of this is, how do we use and how do we convince ourselves to be who we are, to be ourselves, to be honest. If we have a thought and it is our thought about something and we've reasoned it out, we feel that thought has some value, to share that thought, to express it, whether anyone hears or not, whether anyone listens or not. These are things that people are used to not doing. They're used to shutting that out of themselves. They're shutting it off. You can't shut it out because you're life. You can't be shut out in that respect. You can only shut something down. You can only constrict or restrict the good that is within you. You can withhold it. But if you do, one of the points of this being called the map of consciousness, the idea of oneness, there is nothing else, there's no one else. I'm talking to you, but eventually and essentially I'm talking to myself. You're listening, but it's me listening to, no, it's our common source listening to both of us, interacting with itself. Okay, because these are different perspectives. We are creators of our experiences, and we have the ability. We're using the ability to create the experiences that we have. Many of the experiences that we have are ones that we would rather not accept that they are of our own creation. And unless you're willing to accept yourself as the creator of your own experience, whether you originated it or not, yeah, someone has set some things in motion. But see, there's again, we have this idea that life begins and ends with the body. The life doesn't begin or end with the body. Consciousness is consciousness. Death does not apply. The idea of death could, until such time as one realizes, I'm still here. Oh, there's a body over there, but here I am. And I'm still aware, I'm still looking at things, I'm still hearing things, and the body is over there. Imagine when someone comes to that realization that they still live. They believed in death all of their life. They feared it and everything else. They've done all these things, and yet time comes, they pass through the portal, then there it is, and I'm still here. And then the other part of it is that here we are as a society, we're used to thinking that the body is the alpha and omega of life, and therefore when someone goes, there's nothing else to see. There's no one else to talk to. There's nothing that there's loss, for example. Amazing that there really is no loss. What is lost are opportunities to love. That's a loss. And when love is available as a choice and not chosen, there's a loss in the quality of the life experience. That's where the loss is. The loss is quality of life. It's not loss of life. It's the loss of quality of life. It's the loss of depth, of feeling. It's the loss of connection between people, between other life forms. Our loss of health is just one expression of that. And the thing about it is that because we have the ability to discern these things and actually assess all of this, we have the ability, we have the power, and you could say the responsibility to shift and change that. When we change ourselves and become who we are, as we move from this, whether it's a predominant place or not, because even this idea of attractor fields, all of our experiences are the result of likes attracting likes. They may think of themselves as opposites. They may think of themselves as having had a clash or something like that. But something in their consciousness has actually brought them to the experience. And on the same token, someone in their consciousness keeps other experiences from occurring. However, the sometimes we want to see like justice occur, and we start thinking in terms of, well, if justice is served, we want to be the one to see it. We want to see it happening, and it's not. That's a desire. Okay, that's a desire that, in fact, is in the area of force. Okay, it's below courage, and not your job. Okay, to be the meter out of justice for someone else. It's your job to be the best you that you can imagine yourself to be. That's our full-time job, is being ourselves and discovering what that is. So as we start making those choices more and more and more along the lines, as we move through and beyond pride, we move into courage, the courage to speak our mind, the neutrality, the ability to simply allow someone to have another opinion that's not ours, and we're neutral to it, the willingness to try something new, uh, the without prejudice, so to speak, the acceptance. We're continuing, and we continue to move up. We continue to be more and more who we are. And guess what? At love, at 500, now 500 again is not simply halfway between point zero zero 0.02 and 1. 1 is much, much far beyond. And yet 5.5, you've gone a long way, pulling yourself out of the other stuff, so to speak. And then as you move on and further, you're getting more and more to who you are, and in oneness, in resonance with it, in harmony with it, in the presence, in consciousness of it. That's really the point. That's really the point. Look at there. Benign. Look at the words that describe the state and the direction that we're moving in. Understanding, forgiveness. Look at there. Optimism and trust. Cooperation. You hear that? This is all power. Here's competition. So these are the things that some of the additions that I've made. Here's you go, your health and healing. It's all moving in that direction. Here's our disease, dis-ease. You start seeing it in this way. You start seeing, and you start having a sense of the state and the level of consciousness of the ideas that are being presented to us, because we are carriers of the effects of the ideas that we knowingly or unknowingly have given form to, have cooperated with, and perpetuated. So where do you want to go? Where do you want to be is the question. This is why I see this map of consciousness as valuable, as useful. It's a useful tool. It's great to understand. It's great to understand. So that is, there's the time again. I've been on it. I love it. I'll turn that off. That's the map of consciousness. And that's the journey that I see is useful, beneficial. We're all on that journey. We're all someplace on it. And the point that I want to make, the impression I would like to extend, or the invitation, is that we have the ability, irrespective of what anyone else is wanting to do or is visualizing or seeing. I mean, we hear what someone wants to do and wants for humanity by whatever year. And, it gets pumped out and pumped out and pumped out. And yet, it's somewhere. It's not a point that it has to be one or the other. What's more important as it relates to mothers of peace? What's more important is each of us giving energy, thought, and love to what makes our hearts tick, what warms our heart, the things that are meaningful to us. That is more important than anything else. What people are doing somewhere else in the world doesn't matter. That will work itself out. What's important is that we give our own energy to what's within us, what calls for us. There are 8 billion people on this planet. And something, if 8 billion people want to do what the World Economic Forum wants to do, and one person does not, then that one person, not the matter. You need to know where your source is. You need to follow it. And when you know where your source is, and you realize that you are an expression of that source, your life is the life of that source, whatever name you want to call it. And I know that's not taught. We are typically taught, even in science. Science wants to do experiments and they want to take the scientists out. They want to disconnect them from it like there's no connection whatsoever. Not even possible. But they're going around acting as though it's possible, and no one's telling them this might as well be the king without any clothes on. The other side of it is that so many religions, they have this idea of the central authority of God being there someplace or at a resort somewhere, just chilling out on the golf course while we do all our toil and stuff here. It's not true either. So if these are ideas that we haven't processed within ourselves to come to a point of understanding or understanding, to come to a point of peace where God ain't over there, God is in here. Love isn't over there, love is always here. And I'm holding the key to the spigot. It's not someone else's to do. I don't need to find someone else to complete me. I need to complete myself. I can't and I don't need to think that something outside of myself is going to be what my savior, so to speak, or someone, because there is no one else. And actually, when you look at many of the things that Jesus was a guy just like you and I, or you may not be a guy listening to this. He was a human being. There is a state of consciousness. There's a state of consciousness that we are all connected to, some more consciously and some not. J.R. Newton was more consciously aware of and connected to that state of consciousness. He was able to open up. He trusted that power. He trusted it implicitly to let it be and let it do. The people who could not afford what he did, there's no charge. He treated everyone the same. No cost whatsoever. Didn't worry about it. Didn't concern himself with it. Those who could did. And every place he went, he left a trail of not a few people, but thousands of people whose lives were fundamentally, significantly improved, whose health had returned, whose pain had left, whose eyesight had restored. Some people had the glaucoma. There were a couple blind guys that found their way, got together, and then found their way to see him. Both of them had their sight was restored. This is the power that is within each of us. And we hold the key to allowing it, to expressing it. It's the power to change anything and everything for the better. So I think that's what I want to say for today. And I want to thank you for watching. I am, I got a lot of good stuff that I'm going to be putting up different places. Not rediscovering, I knew all this stuff was there, so I hadn't lost any of it. But I did a video a few years ago on a fellow by the name of Paul Pantone. I produced 3 DVDs at that time because each was over an hour long, and it's basically just a set of conversations. But I picture a better life. If I were to come back to this particular world after I left, it would be, for me, at least I'm feeling it had been under some conditions. But I want to plant the seeds for those conditions now. Those conditions basically are for everyone, for it to be a norm, for people to have enough to do whatever want, where money in the way we think of it today is not an issue. Now, everyone has their own supply, or everyone has enough to do what they want, when they want to do it, no matter how much it costs. There's a system in place that allows people to either have enough or create it if they don't. That system doesn't exist as a well-known, because actually the ability to do it does exist, first of all, in the way we think of in terms of money, and that is through CoopCrowd. And so that is a modality that can help millions upon millions of people to help themselves, to change their financial situation. That does not require you to go after the people who quote unquote have, while maintaining again, that's the realm of force, right? You're going to go and force people to give up. You know, that's what was done to the people of the United States in 1933, I think. People who had gold and they had spent that time, I'll say it today in hindsight, the crooks that were in the positions of trust put out an edict basically telling the people you can't have a whole gold, because they thought gold was valuable. The people who were hoarding it or whatever, they thought it was valuable. The people who wanted it thought it was valuable. And so here, let's take what you think of as valuable away from you. That's what was done. They threatened them. You can pretty much bet the people who were their cronies were not impacted. They weren't inconvenienced. They inconvenienced the masses. This has happened time and time again. It's happening today. Guess what? You can change it. And in fact, you must change it. Each of us in our own way. But it begins by following our own dream, knowing what it is, giving it life, and living it. You're immediately redirecting your attention to something else. And in the same way, CoopCrowd, you are directing a small amount of your of financial assets, putting it into the system, at which point in time you invite 3 people to do just what you did. 3 people. Now, at some point in time, enough people are going to see this and know about it that they're going to be wanting to do this. So you could be having 3 people. You can sign up today, and your could be friends. You could have your 3 people lined up before you even join. Have them lined up, then you join, and then they join underneath you, and then their 3 join underneath them. It creates an income for you, an income stream for you. As they have their 3, they get an income stream, and as their 3 have 3, they have a ongoing and growing income stream. And that's what you're creating with CoopCrowd, an ongoing stream of income, an ongoing stream of available income, and an ongoing stream of substantial income as more people join from your invitation. But all you have to have are 3, and then you also have to support those 3 in getting theirs, both of which can be done actually in a day's time for each. But if you do that within 7 days, and they do it within 7 days, within 2 weeks' time, you've got your money back. You will have received more than you put in. But on top of it, you will have started a stream of income that just continues to grow as more people change their consciousness for the better. All right, I'm done for today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If in my description, I invite you to join CoopCrowd. And if another CoopCrowd member has deemed this talk of some value and some use, please use their invitation to join. Let's change things, one for ourselves. Let's fill our own cup, so to speak, so that it runneth over, so to speak. And let's help others do the same by showing them how, by being the example and letting them see for themselves that it's possible for them too. Till next time, I'll bid you adieu. Say peace. Be well and prosperous. And I love you all.